Kennedy and Dr. Jim Flynn become our facilitators. We appreciate our legislators being here and coming out of their busy schedules. But I guess I'll start it off. I'm Sanford Holbrooks. I'm the superintendent in Robertson County, Kentucky, and originally from McGoffin County, same as Representative Blanton. So I'll start off here to my right.
Good morning, Nancy Hutchinson, Chief Executive Officer of KEDC, and we're glad to have you all.
Hey, good morning. Billy Parker, Scott County Schools Superintendent.
David Gillum, Superintendent, Madison County Schools.
Harry Burchett, Superintendent, Harrison County Schools.
Danny Atkins, Superintendent, Woodford County Schools.
Tom Cochran, Superintendent, Johnson County Schools.
David Trimble, Superintendent, Pikeville Independent.
Anna Shepherd, Superintendent, Floyd County Schools.
Amy Baker, Superintendent, Bourbon County Schools.
Stephen McCauley, Superintendent, Paris Independent Schools.
Wayne Roberts, Superintendent, Wayne County Schools.
Patrick Richardson, Superintendent, Pulaski County Schools.
Mark Riles, Facility Consultant, KEDC and OVEC.
Jerry Prince, Director of Technology Services. KEDC.
Charles Holbrook, Technology Services, KEDC.
Sam Atkins, Chief Business Officer, KEDC.
Russell Thompson, Superintendent, Pikeville Independent.
Larry Codiron, Superintendent, Race Worthington Independent.
Kenny Bell, Superintendent, Wolf County.
Tricia Carroll, Chief Operating Officer, KEDC.
Jim Evans, Leadership Instruction, KEDC.
Stephanie Little, Director of Special Ed for KEDC.
Tim Crawford, KEDC Board Attorney.
Abby Labor, KEDC CRISA Lead Coordinator.
Adam Bowling, State Representative, 87th District. I represent Bell County and half of Harlan County.
Bobby McCool, State Representative, 97th District, Johnson County, Wolf County, and Morgan County.
Norma Kirk McCormick, State Representative, District 93, Martin County, and East Pike County.
I guess last but not least, I'm John Blanton, the State Representative for the 92nd District, which is McGoffin, Knott, and a portion of Pike County.
Good deal. Thank you. We also have some guests on our Zoom. We have some legislators on the Zoom, and we also have several superintendents. So we would like to ask you to unmute and please introduce yourselves. Can we get them on the screen, guys? No, it can't be done. Okay. And I do want to make sure that everyone knows this is being taped live on Facebook. So it is live production. So can we get them to do that, or is that impossible? Okay. We'll start with the legislators on there if they could introduce themselves, and then we'll go to the superintendents that are in attendance on Zoom.
I'll go first. Can you hear me? Yes,
ma'am.
Good morning, everybody, and especially my Pikeville Independent Superintendent, Mr. Trimble, this morning. I'm Angie Hatton. I represent Letcher and part of Pike. I'm in my Frankfurt office this morning because I have some meetings up here. I'm glad to be invited.
Philip Pratt, State Representative, 62nd District, 2 precincts in Fayette County, Scott County, and Owen County.
I think that's all our legislators. Tim
Okay. Superintendents on Zoom, would you mind please introducing yourself?
Tim Spencer, Superintendent, Menifee County Schools, also resident of Wolf County. So thank you, Representative McCool, for being with us today, and appreciate all of our legislators for being with us today.
Stephen Evans, Bath County Superintendent, glad to be here.
Dr. Robbie Fletcher, Superintendent, Lawrence County. And again, thank you. I'd like to echo what Mr. Superintendent Spencer had. We do appreciate all of our representatives and legislators being present today. Thank you.
Dr.
Okay,
Diane
so
Hatchett, Superintendent at Berea Independent.
Okay, good deal. Thank you very much, Dr. Hatchett. At this time, I would like to introduce our facilitator for this morning. We will be joined in a few minutes by our Lieutenant Governor, and we have asked her to say a few words as well, and she will do that in just a few minutes. But I would like to ask Dr. Jim Flynn, who is Executive Director of Kentucky Association for School Superintendents. He will be our facilitator along with Eric Kennedy. He will also, I told him he's color. So we're going to ball game this. So Dr. Flynn, I'll let you start.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here, and thank you to our legislators for spending a little time with us. Superintendents can relate to this, that oftentimes people don't tell us what we've done well and say thank you for doing some things for us. But we want to say first, thanks for your service, and thanks, for even last session, some things that occurred that I think were real big wins. One, we passed a new tier for the TRS system, and that was done in a way that included everybody's voice at the table and the way that good legislation needs to be done. And we got a new tier to the finish line, and we know that helped us set us up for some improvements for that system in the future and financially. We also got full day kindergarten funding, and we really appreciate that. We've been asking for that for 20 plus years. And one of the things, though, that a good superintendent, and you all understand this, knows is that if you're going to really leverage those funds for the benefit of the students and the schools, you got to know that it's a recurring revenue stream. And so one of our top priorities is permanently funding full day kindergarten, and we also would like that to be codified in the statute so that we know we can count on it. But we do appreciate that, and then we also appreciate the relief measures. This has been an extraordinary time that we've been in, and through the session, you all stepped up, gave us the tools that we needed to know so that we could move forward and do the best job for our kids. And we had a good conversation up here before the meeting on how we fought hard to try to get our students in-person learning as much as possible and as safe as possible. And we couldn't have done it without some of the relief measures that you all provided in the session and in the special session. And hopefully, as we get into the next session, maybe look at some of those longer term needs moving forward that'll help our schools. And so I did want to say thank you for those things. And there's probably many others that we could highlight, but I want to mention those. One of the things that none of us had experienced is a run of budget sessions like this. I started this job, this is my third year in this position, and I haven't enjoyed a session yet that didn't include a budget, and so that always makes it interesting. But this is the big budget session, and so that's certainly going to represent our top priority. And one of the things that we're wanting to highlight and shine light on is the SEEK base, because that's fundamental to our funding structure for education in Kentucky. And when we talk about what's full funding look like, one of the pictures we're painting for you all to consider is, let's assume that the 1990 SEEK base was close to full funding. That came on the heels of the Rose case that led to CARA. But if that SEEK base grew by inflation, then it would be about $4,768 per student right now. So that's about $768 per student short of what you could argue is full funding. And in the school funding task force, that $4,768 was referenced, and that's kind of where we got that number. But I know that's something that we can figure out. In our ask around that, full day kindergarten funding, permanent and codified is probably top priority among superintendents across the state. And I talked to many of them, and also pupil transportation, which has been underfunded. And those things were both listed as top priorities off the school funding task force. And there's many other things. We have teachers and staff shortage. You are probably reading about bus drivers and custodians being short, and the teacher pipeline's been real thin for a number of years. And we really need your help working toward that. But what we will point out is if we get the full day kindergarten and the transportation funding, then that will free up some funds that would give districts some latitude to do what they need based on their local context. And I think one thing we all learned in a pandemic is a one size fits all solutions generally not best, and allow the local context to have some latitude to do what they need within a framework that you all create. And we've appreciated the work y'all done around that moving forward. So I guess let's start a little bit with it being a budget session, and what priorities do you all have, and what ways do you all anticipate you all could help us along the way of getting our schools where they need to be. We've had all these economic development projects announced, including the big Ford plant. The foundation of workforce development is in our P12 schools. And so I think it's a priority that needs our investment, and pre-pandemic, we were on a good budget path, a couple of sessions ago, and hopefully can regain that momentum. So I'll pause there and let you all kind of respond to that, and then we'll add questions from our audience as we move along. Yeah. Well, anybody can jump in, or Representative Blanton, do you want to kick off, or?
So first of all, let me clarify for during the special session, the relief we gave you all. We want you to keep in mind that relief is up into a time frame in January. God forbid that we ever have to again. Hopefully we can get this pandemic somewhat under control, but we are prepared to go back. It's the reason we put that timeline. We are prepared, if necessary, to go back and give you more relief if necessary when we get into session. And so that's why that time frame was set the way it was. See how this works. We'll take the good things that worked, give you more of it. Things that wasn't working, we don't need to do them again, right? So we set a time frame there for that. Secondly, talking about the SEEK formula, I'm in agreement. I happen to have a bug in my ear all the time at home. My wife been a retired school teacher. So I get that constant buzzing going on all the time. But no, the SEEK formula, we do need to continue to increase that. And I don't know, conversations and things coming to fruition, totally two different things in the General Assembly. But there's been conversations that I've heard by individuals within the General Assembly of looking at, instead of doing the SEEK formula based on your attendance, simply based on your total student population. That way you don't have that fluctuation if you've got so many students out and things. So would like your all's inputs and thoughts on that, because I've heard people talking about that in the General Assembly. Is that better than doing it by attendance, or is it worse? Please give me your input, because I'm going to stand by our schools and our public education. The second thing is, I know at least for one that Representative James Allen Tipton is filing a piece of legislation to make full day kindergarten funding on a regular basis. And I'm certainly supportive of that. We need to be doing that. Quite frankly, was shocked that we weren't, because we had full day kindergarten back home, but I didn't realize that the state wasn't funding it all. So that was news to me, and they should have been doing it all along. So certainly supportive of that. Some of you in the room here benefited from a project, something that Representative Tom Odell Smith and I started, and we literally, I'm not talking about the metaphorical 11th hour. I'm talking about the final hour session. Got the monies in for vocational schools this past year. And we plan to go back and push for more funding this year to help expand these vocational schools. I met with a group of students in the Capitol this week from my district. And as I talked to them about the importance of their education, including post-secondary education, that there's nothing shameful if you're not, if you don't feel that college is the right fit for you, to seek out vocational schools and trainings that are out there as well. We want to prepare you so you can go out into the workforce and be a productive citizen. So I know, for one, I came from a family that college was push, and that's good. I'm glad they did. But we also have to keep in mind, not everybody, college isn't meant for everybody. So we have to create opportunities for those that maybe aren't a fit. They just don't fit into the college setting, and they would rather do something with their hands or, be in some type of construction. And we've got a great apprenticeship program going now in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We've got a lot of, I come from a very heavy union area, and all of those have some great apprenticeship programs that lead to good paying jobs. So, I'm going to be supportive anytime that you all need some help from me. Please reach out. I'll do my best to try to help you. I'll tell you right up front, I can't deliver 100% of the time, but I can work and try 100% of the time, and that I do. So thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I asked a question. Do we have some input about the SEEK? Is it better to go by the total student population rather than by the attendance each day, where there's not that fluctuation, to where you're getting that constant flow of revenue? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking you all. You're the experts.
Well, I know we have a lot of opinions on that probably. And one of the things that all superintendents deal with is we have to staff our schools based on membership. So, and so we have to have the number of teachers there as if everybody's going to show up. But, and I know Dr. Fletcher is online, and he and some other superintendents served as ex officio members of the school funding task force. And they reminded everyone, and Robbie, jump in here if you want to, that the SEEK is a distribution formula. And so if the amount of money in the system stays the same, then it's just going to reshuffle how the money's distributed. And so if you think about that, then in general, if you have above average attendance and the money stays the same, and we move to an ADM or average daily membership model, then you're going to lose money overall in that redistribution. And if you have below average attendance, then you'll gain on that. And so our advice is, if you're going to make a change like that, it needs to, either hold harmless all the districts from going backwards, or coincide with an infusion or an extra investment into public education, so that it doesn't cause a financial hurt. Does that make sense?
Jim, I'll be happy to jump in on that. If you were to go to, according to the OEA report that was given to the task force, if you were to go from ADA to ADM, it would cost the budget $285.5 million. So, but if you don't add that extra money, you're going to have to cut down the SEEK base. So again, when we talk about going from average daily attendance to membership, that's only going to help all districts if there's money put into the budget, which makes sense. The report that was given to us actually did two things. It said this is what it would, how the SEEK base would change if there's no more money put into the SEEK calculation. Again, just like Jim said, it's a distribution formula. So you're looking at an adjustment down to $3,699.55. And that would take away, for example, if you were a district with lower attendance than average, you would gain. But if you had a higher, if you were above the state average in attendance, then you would lose money. So again, ADM makes sense if we're going to look at that approximately, according to OEA, $285.5 million added into the state budget just for education.
Any other superintendents like to jump on that or extend a question around ADM? And appreciate Representative Blanton being interested in that. That was one of those recommendations. And And I know I've had lots of conversations over the years with superintendents about that. And really those issues that we've described are probably the things we grapple with the most.
Well, thank you all for explaining how all that works. You know, I'm hearing very, very layman terms on what takes place. That's why I rely on you all, the experts, to guide me when these things come up, because the last thing I want to do is be supportive of something that's going to be harmful to our schools. And I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And I'm a believer, if I don't know the answer, ask the question. And so that's why I asked today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we appreciate that. Well, hello, Lieutenant Governor. Welcome. Glad to have you. We were talking about budget. We kind of started with budget. We've only had budget sessions in recent years.
I can't believe
so,
a room full of superintendents would be talking about a budget.
Yeah, imagine that. You know, we had a good budget that was kind of in progress pre-pandemic, and then everything kind of got blown up, and we all understand why. And now we're kind of moving into a better direction, but that budget starts with the administration. And you know, we've asked for consideration around the SEEK base as a kind of a top priority, and if it, you know, an inflationary equivalent to the 1990 base is an investment with priorities around full day kindergarten and pupil transportation. But the list can go on. We've got staff shortages. We need to invest in career tech, you know, funding. We need to keep the progress in school safety and resilience. So, you know, we can go on and on with those things. But what comments do you have this morning? And do you want to speak maybe to the budget and how you see that coming out of the governor's office?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. First of all, thank you all for having me today. I've actually led some professional development trainings in this very room. So it's like kind of being at home. But thank you all for all of the work that you do in our school districts. And thank you for being committed to our kids every day. I know it has been an unbelievable challenge over the last 2 years. All of you know I was a teacher. My husband is still a teacher. So I hear the stories every day about the challenges that probably most of the public doesn't know about or doesn't see. And I know that all of that finds its way to the top as well. So thank you for doing everything that you've done. I can just kind of go over a little bit about the budget in general, about it's coming out. The governor and I are working on that right now. I will not get out ahead of him with any breaking news today, but we are committed to continuing to be an education first administration. And so you're going to see another budget. Will this be the third one? Yeah, the second or third one that we've been working on, where there's going to be a significant investment proposed for public education. And I'm going to give you some examples of what we've put in previous budgets. We had $3 billion in each of the last 2 fiscal years. And that an enormous number includes fully funding teacher retirement system. It includes increasing the salary base for all school employees, teachers, as well as classified employees. It involved funding instructional materials, which had gone unfunded for some time. It involved a 1% increase to the SEEK formula, $5 million in the budget to recruit more kids into preschool, and $1 million was invested from my cabinet and my former cabinet, I should say. I only have one job now. As Secretary of Education, we invested $1 million into recruiting and retaining more teachers of color across Kentucky. And so those are really important priorities for us, of course, as they are for you. And when the governor received his GEAR funding, so that discretionary funding where he could spend it on whatever he chose to spend it on, I knew that watching the CARES dollars and ARPA funding and those proposals coming in, there was going to be a lot of investment in what has been dubbed as learning loss, right? And catching kids up and those types of things. And so we wanted to utilize those dollars to help you support the whole child. And so the first round of GEAR funding, we took $30 million for K-12 technology assistance. Obviously, that was a huge need. as we pivoted on a dime 2 years ago. And then also with food programs. I cannot tell you how remarkable it was to watch, and I'm not surprised because I worked in a school system, but to watch all of our schools recognize the needs of their students and deliver millions and millions and millions of meals to kids who we all know would not have gotten them otherwise. And so we included in that 30 million assistance for food programs at schools as well. The second round came through, and it was about 19 million. And so we invested $15 million in our Friskies. And I tell people all the time, I wish the public had even an ounce of a clue what goes on in our family and youth resource centers, because you all know the work that they do is remarkable. So, and it's kind of like a hidden gem that not really many people know unless they benefit from it. So 15 million to our Friskies, and they helped support a litany of things, from counseling for students and families, mental health counseling. They helped connect parents to childcare. That was a huge issue, obviously continues to be a huge issue for families. And we also gave $3 million to the Council for Post-Secondary Education to help with summer bridge programs, another $1 million to CPE for college and career academies. And the reason why that was important to us was because we knew the kids that needed that touch point of a guidance counselor, and the ones that pretty much lacked, a lot of support around what their next steps would be, whether that is the workforce or college or what opportunities may be out there. Those are the kids that needed the access. And so we wanted to make sure that we invested in them in these summer bridge programs to the kids who are low income, low socioeconomic status, minority students, to provide those wraparound services to them, to get them across the finish line and into college, and help to keep them there. So that was a big focus of ours too, with that gear funding. So every dollar of it went to essentially technology, food, social and emotional mental health, well-being for our students. You all know that, I'm sure that you know that Dr. Thompson, Dr. Glass, and I came together and put together the Commonwealth Education Continuum to truly create a pipeline from early childhood all the way through post-secondary, because as you all, I'm sure, have experienced just like I did, we tend to lose our kids at the transition points. The ones that are the most at risk get lost in the transition points. And so we wanted to create truly a cradle to career education bridge to job training in Kentucky. And so we've started that work. And I'll be honest with you, when we came up with it, I thought we were going to do this new, this press release and a news conference about it. And I really thought to myself, well, nobody's going to care but us. And I will tell you that I could not have been more wrong. We were inundated with educators and business leaders and folks across Kentucky who were saying, this is so important. How can I get involved? I want to do this. I want to do that. So we actually created sub-working groups with folks who are in the field right now to work as our advisors to help us with that. I'm still amazed at the work that was done there. We had 3 main focus points this year. I oversaw the work to diversify the teacher workforce, to recruit and retain more teachers of color, but teachers in general, because we have been facing a shortage. It is only going to get worse, and we've got to be prepared for that. Dr. Glass and Dr. Thompson worked on dual credit opportunities, as well as bridging the transition from high school to college. And Dr. Thompson always makes this point that I always say, college is not for everyone. And Dr. Thompson says, no, it is. It just doesn't look the same for everyone. And so I stand corrected every time that he corrects me on that. And last but not least, what we are working on right now is the Student Mental Health Action Summits. And I have to tell you, these kids are absolutely remarkable. We partnered with the Student Advisory Council to the commissioner. Actually just met with him last night. They planned and implemented every single mental health action summit that we had across the state. We had 10 in different regions of the state where we invited middle and high school students in to hear from them. And I think the best compliment I could have gotten was at the very first one. It was in Bowling Green. The very first one in Bowling Green, I had a student walk up to me and say, I can't believe that we just did this. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I thought you were just going to come and read us a PowerPoint like everybody else does. I didn't know you were going to ask us what our opinions were. I thought, well, that's pretty telling, right? And so lifting up those student voices across the state has been incredible. And you guys will be hearing from them this session because they are taking all of the data that we've collected from students across the state. They are currently trying to figure out what priorities they want to push forward to our lawmakers. And they're going to come present to them during the session about what mental health supports they need. And they're currently grappling with what we all grapple with, which is what is the most expedient thing we can get done? What is the easiest change we can make? What with the things that are more difficult, how much is it going to cost? And so it's a great lesson for them, quite frankly, in all of this, but they are so excited. They're far more emotionally intelligent than any of us are. And so their leadership and their voice is going to be critical to this movement. And quite frankly, they have a lot to teach us all. So that's just an overview of what's gone on lately. But I can tell you that with the budget that is coming out, you'll see all of those things again. I don't think that's a secret. Prioritizing every aspect of education, because when we talk about building an economy, when we talk about preparing your workforce, it starts in preschool. And every single classroom has to be equipped with the resources that we need and the best people that we can find to build that future economy in Kentucky. And I'm committed, obviously, to doing that and to continue carrying that message, because there's no more important message to me, and it's the lens through which I see everything. So that's my update for budgets and all those types of things.
Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing that Education First budget and working with our legislators as they navigate to the finish line. So Representative McCool, I know you and I were talking a little bit about mental health just before this, but of course, you know, we're also talking about a budget and those things. So
I have to tell you, Representative McCool, the students were looking at your bill last night, so they're very excited. So,
Good.
yeah.
That gives me a segue into my bill, doesn't it? So, thank you very much. And certainly we know that if nothing else, we've learned a lot through this last pandemic that we've been going through, and it's still there. It's still there. So we, you know, and one of the things that come out of that was not only their physical needs, but the mental health as well. So I have filed a bill, but it's being led by students. I don't know if you know that or not, but one young lady from Jefferson County, a young man from Johnson County, and another young lady from Lincoln, I think, and they're very bright. You're right. So so I just sit back and let them run it.
Representative McCool, I think your microphone may have accidentally got turned off for the Zoom folks.
Really? It's green.
Is it green?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Thanks, yeah.
Okay. I do repeat all that, right? It was really good if you didn't hear that before.
It was. I will attest. It was really good.
In the budget.
Add into it as you want to, I guess. But the mental health is very important to me and awareness. All this bill does really is to bring awareness to mental health. Now, don't be too alarmed, because it doesn't increase the days that you allow for excused absence. It's got in there. All they can do is utilize this as an excused absence. What we want to get them to do is talk about it, expose that they have a difficulty, and share that, and hopefully maybe come out of this bill as well. And some, if after maybe 2 times of being identified as missing due to mental health, and to have some counselor reach out to them and touch base with them. That's some of the discussion that's going on. So thank you for talking about the mental health. It's very important. I hope you'll look at that bill, and please, I want your input. I need your input, because I don't just put forth a bill just to have a bill out there. I want it to be something that's workable, and it's going to be beneficial to you and our students. It's focused on our students. So Thank you for that segue into that, Senator Governor. Yes, budget is very important, no doubt. This is what this year's coming up with. And, we did have 2 years ago, I thought a real good budget plan, but unfortunately COVID hit and changed our plans drastically. Now we get a chance to come back and revisit this. And there's lots of needs. I'm interested in not only SEEK, there are some discussions going on about the SEEK funding and how that should occur. So your input needs to drive the bus, and we need that. And we'll step back and help push the bus along, but we need your input on how that should be focused on. Vocational education was mentioned by Representative Blanton, and as well, it is very important. Actually, to let you know, I'm a retired teacher. I'm also a vocational education person. That's what I've done for many years. So yes, I'm going to be an advocate for that because I know how valuable that is, not only to the school system, but the working world. And we all know that education is the backbone to our Commonwealth. So, and in every phase of education is very important. I very much appreciate what you all have done. I want you to know that. I want you to hear it from and the leadership you have brought forth. I do believe in our local superintendents, our local boards. I believe they have the greatest interest in heart to what's best for students. And I don't know anybody has any more passion than that. I will tell you, I did have the opportunity to take part of the become a acting principal or whatever. I don't know if that's the right term.
Principal for a day.
Principal for the day. I only want to do it for one day though, by the way. So it was really it's just fascinating to be part of that and walk in and the enthusiasm that these teachers and staff, not just teachers, but the staff and the principals bring in, and from the little kids there, you have to be ready. If you're not ready, then so that was a great experience and be part of that. I did that both at the elementary school and the high school. And thank you for allowing me to do that. I want you to know that it was very, very rewarding for me. Another thing I'm very interested in is it was brought up about the busing. And the reason I know we haven't paid funded fully as it should be, but there's some differences between busing in Pike County than Jefferson County. And I'm not saying one's better than the other one. So the need has to be different. So how do we make sure you get what you need and it's a level playing ground? I know that there may be more miles total in Jefferson County driven, but the roads in Pike County and Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky takes more wear and tear on the buses. So how that's going to play out, I don't know. Again, that's something that we need, or I need, or others I'm sure will need that too. Your guidance on that, how to look at that. I will tell you that I'm a co-sponsor for the all-day kindergarten and very proud to do that. Hopefully, I'm confident and feeling good about that getting through because it's very critical. And I appreciate Representative James Timpton for leading that. He is an outstanding representative and he will take that charge forward very, very well. So other things that hasn't been discussed yet, but like even with the health care for our retirees, you may think, well, that doesn't impact your current, but it does because teachers who are in the pipeline want to make sure that opportunity is for them when someday when they do retire, and hopefully that's many years from now. So, but at the same time, that needs to be solid and I hope, and I know I think it's funded at 60% now. Is that correct? So, but how do we keep growing? Got a good report this year on the retirees. I'm tickled. So, but we are too. You are too. We need to keep that rolling. It's not something we should stop away from. And we didn't get there overnight, and we're not going to get it fixed overnight. So we just need to continue that pattern. And like I said, local control with your boards are really, you'll be on my, I'll call my superintendents. Who let's see my superintendents here. I got them on speed dial. So, and I appreciate when anytime you contact me, let me know what's going on. You're the experts. We need your guidance. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Representative McCool. I'm glad you mentioned the investment of TRS. That's something we also need to lift you all up because the last 5 or 6 years, you all have stepped up and fully funded that, the ADC of the ARC. for TRS, and then the medical insurance fund, though, has been a little bit more debate. And I think one of the things that we would say is that, just because that fund is ahead of schedule, doesn't mean we ought to back off our investment, because, I think that's part of what got us in trouble on the legacy plan. It's not all of it, but part of the story. So we are advocating for full funding of the medical insurance trust fund ARC as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So we were talking a little bit earlier, we kind of segued into mental health, and Representative Kirk McCormick was sharing with me, she spent a portion of her professional career in social work, but appreciate you being here, and like to hear you talk a little bit about what your interests are and the budget and all those things.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a retiree from the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet. So as I always told them during my campaign, I have skin in the game when it comes to our retirements. So I started my career in the field of social work, and for 10 years, I worked in a rural area, came to Fayette County and worked 3 years, went back home, worked a total of 10 years, and then I decided to switch careers and went to vocational rehab. And it was a wonderful, wonderful program. I mostly served, I picked them up in their high school, junior, senior year, and worked with adults in transition. So I have actually worked for 31 years. I've been in the homes of these children. That's the reason I had so much concern when, they had to go, they closed the schools down, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew, what the kids was going to be exposed to or lack, the abuse and neglect. And I had some real concerns about that. Then as a VR counselor, I always told my consumers, you're either born with money, you marry money, or you get an education and you earn your money. And of all those three choices, you best to earn it, because the others can disappear. And if you were self-sufficient with an education, it gives you so much many choices in life. I worked with all the programs. I worked with all the schools in 10, actually total of 14 county areas. I worked with the vocational programs. I worked with the community colleges, and I worked with the universities. I had students everywhere. And believe it or not, being in Eastern Kentucky with all those counties, I had the biggest caseload and one of the most successful caseloads in the state of Kentucky. Counselor of the Year awards 2 or 3 times. Those things didn't mean a lot to me, because I never knew what my closure numbers were until, the end of the year, and they tallied them up. I just went out there and worked with the students to give them a better opportunity in life, and it was through education. So I strongly support, I'm a firm believer that a child has to have a good foundation to build on, or they're going to run into trouble in middle school and high school. Everything to do with education impacts our whole entire state. I don't know if you realize that or not, but education is the key. You look at every industry, from medical to legal, financial, every aspect of education is where it's at. That's the reason we have to have a strong education system. It's very difficult to recruit industry if you do not have a strong educational system in your territory or in your area. So I want it to be the best. Our agency led the nation in our programs that I worked with in both fields. So Kentucky needs to be up there at the top, so that industry will be excited to come to Kentucky. Now, the more it's all a cycle, but when you have more industry in the state, we have more tax revenue to put into our educational system. So we have to focus not just on education, but as representatives, we literally have to wear a hat, many hats, because it's our responsibility for supporting the recruitment of industry, like the Ford company. It's not going to affect Eastern Kentucky as far as jobs, unless they want to get up and move to that area, but those are really good jobs. But the bottom line, it's really going to improve the tax base of Kentucky. So hopefully the monies will be spread out statewide. And, but it will give our tax revenue much more so we can put money into education and so forth. As far as our budget coming up this year, we want to make sure that we do give everything that they need. I was always one that addressed need versus want. So we have to make sure that whatever we appropriate, that it is sustainable futuristically. And as of right now, I'm thinking the future of Kentucky is looking pretty bright. So
That's good.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. And Representative Bowling, we're building on this economic development wins that we've had, and it's making a bright future. What do you see for the future of Kentucky and the future education budget for our state?
Well, thank you again for inviting me down. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today, to hear from you all and my fellow reps on this issue, and the Lieutenant Governor, of course. But the time is now. When you look at the work that the school funding task force did, it highlights different needs in different areas, and they did very good work. They kind of prioritized the needs, and it's always good to see those priorities. But no matter which priority you're talking about, at the end of the day, you're talking about more funding. And so where Kentucky sits now, coming out of this pandemic, I hope that we're in a position to where we can make the investments we need to make in education. And if we can make them now, we all know they will pay off in the future through economic development, through, a million different ways. Education is the backbone of our Commonwealth, and for economic growth. So, I know we've heard a lot about, going back to the 2020 budget, and we had hoped then to be able to make some investments. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit, of course, and we weren't able to do that. Now we feel like we're on the back end of this thing. We've had the chance to look at revenues, see what they've been, get comfortable with where they are headed. And so, now's a good time. And, there's a whole lot of other needs in the state. I know several have been highlighted, the, pay across the board for things like social workers, some legacy debts, those costs keep increasing year over year. Policing, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we need to look at. However, I do think that, we have the funds, we have a surplus, so we do need to look at education first. In conjunction with you all, figure out where those best dollars are best put, and put our best foot forward on it.
Well, thank you. And we're staying ready to help you with that. So I know we have some of our legislators online. I see Representative Hatton there. Thanks for joining us. And you've heard some of this conversation. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much. Good to see you guys this morning. I'm glad to be here, enjoying the conversation so far. I wanted to say good morning to our Lieutenant Governor and say how much I appreciate that we have an educator in our Lieutenant Governor's office, and I've been watching the work that she's doing, and it is nothing short of amazing the way that the educators in our state are feeling listened to because of not only her spot in the Lieutenant Governor's office, but also as formerly as the chair of the cabinet. So thanks very much, and hope she knows how appreciated she is. I still have one child left in public school system, and she's a senior, and she has senioritis so bad that it's a daily struggle to get her not to affect her school's attendance, because she's just, she's ready to get out there and get in college. But she's a good student, and I'll try not to let her attendance affect her school's funding. As always, as a legislator from East Kentucky, my priority is making sure that rural areas get the equitable funding that they need. And when so much funding is tied to amount of kids in the school, it really hurts areas like mine where populations are shrinking. So I think we have to be really careful when we fund our schools to take into account the fact that when populations shrink, the needs don't decrease for schools like the ones in my district in Letcher and Pike counties. for rural areas, there are always different issues than there are in urban issues. And we're all seeing the pinch for being able to attract and hire and retain certified teachers. We need to make sure that the way we fund schools and the way we fund teaching careers make that doable, especially for the rural areas where that's tougher. And, you know, I served on site-based council for 5 years as parent rep at my kids' elementary school and then their middle school. And I saw how difficult it was to be able to recruit and retain teachers on the salaries that, you know, we're able to offer. And very often we'd have to hire someone who wasn't qualified and get them qualified by the end of the semester because we didn't have qualified applicants even coming in. So that's something we definitely have to be thinking about, and how much teachers' retirement benefits affect our ability to get good teachers and keep them, because our kids deserve them in the rural areas too. And, you know, this budget year is going to be critical. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity where we've got a lot of federal money coming in, and we've got a state budget surplus that we didn't have any right to expect, but due to some good decisions by, you know, our state government officials, we in the legislature, we were able to not let our state's budget fall apart during COVID. And so while this year we do have the money to be able to afford some of these things that we need to be very, very thoughtful about the way we're spending to make sure that it's long-term sustainable for things like all-day kindergarten, because we can afford some of the things we need, but we cannot afford to make dumb decisions or to let scoring political points become priority when our priority is our kids, which, you know, are our future. And I know the folks in this room know that. I'm proud of the way the legislature is able to come together for our kids when we put our minds to it. So I hope that all of us are listening to the things that you guys need, and that you feel the door is open for you to contact us when you need things. So thanks for having me this morning.
Well, thank you, and good luck with that senior. As a parent who has a freshman in college, it gets better. You know.
I have one who's in college. He's a sophomore. One left out.
Representative Pratt, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate giving me a chance to speak. You know, as many of y'all may or not know, I have a wife who's a retired teacher, a daughter-in-law who's a current teacher, and cousins in the Scott County school system that anywhere from school board to teachers to to work in the school system. So this is something that's discussed a lot around our dinner table and when we get together on the weekend. And again, our challenge is a little bit different here in Scott County. Being the fastest growing county, our challenges are different than other counties, which are some are good, some are bad. The things I see upcoming, I'm hearing a lot about is the RTA funding. That's one of the I'm hearing a lot about. I'm glad to see James Tipton, who's a good friend of mine, is actually doing all-day kindergarten funding. That's something that's been talked about a lot, and I think we definitely need to take a look at our funding. And one thing I do want to address, well, I also want to give y'all a kudos for our apprenticeship programs. We need that as a small business owner. I can tell you how valuable that is, without a doubt, because you're right, college is not for everybody, and that's something we need to let the kids have a look at. And it's a good alternative, because if you had to hire a plumber here lately, you realize they make pretty daggone good money, all said and done. But one thing too, my wife would be amiss if I did not mention this. We have to work on discipline in the schools. I will tell you, my wife absolutely loved her job, enjoyed it, but she retired from teaching as fast as she could, and her number one reason was discipline. That's something we have to get a handle on. I think that you're seeing people leaving this profession. Number one reason, and I talked to a lot of them, being a retired teacher, and it all come down to discipline. I don't have the answers. I just have a lot of questions, but that's something we've got to get a handle on, because that's what I'm hearing is the fact that the discipline is something we have to get a handle on, because that's why they're leaving the profession, and that's what we got to get going. But I am concerned, and I do appreciate, kudos to a lot of the things that have been said, but I think we've got our challenges ahead of us. But if we do not educate our kids, we are doomed to fail. So thank you for allowing me to speak today, sir.
Thank you. And, we do agree that the working conditions are a really important factor in our ability to attract and retain teachers. I think there's been some progress through things like the School Safety and Resiliency Act that's put more mental health professionals in schools, emphasize school resource officers and other wraparound services. Lieutenant Governor talked about the Friskies, and all of those parts are really important, and they allow our teachers to focus on what they're trained to do, and that's instruct students. And too often, though, they've had to be the social worker, the therapist, the family counselor, the police investigator, the nurse, and the list can go on and on. But those investments that you all begun have really helped. And I think if we'll continue to look at those as wraparound services and addressing the whole child's needs, then we can make some progress on that. But we don't disagree with you on the discipline part and the working conditions that will help us make a dent there. So,
unfortunately, sir, I've got to jump off. I've got a committee meeting come up here in about 5 minutes. So I'm not leaving because I'm mad. I just got other things to do. But thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and let us know how we can help. And I think someone told me that Senator Storm is on. And so, Senator Storm, are you with us?
Jim, I think he may not be able to join. This is Tim Spencer from Menifee.
Okay.
There's a chance that he may be able to. He's in another meeting right now.
Okay. So, well, we got some time for some questions. Eric Kennedy's on that side of the room. I'm on this side of the room. We've got a mic, and we appreciate the legislators and Lieutenant Governor Coleman being with us and sharing comments. And there's, besides the budget, there's all kinds of other, needs and issues that I know are out there, but because it's a budget session, that's kind of risen to the top. But we'll open the floor to our superintendents for any questions or comments that you all would like to make.
I'll be glad to speak up. I've spoken with a few of you this morning, speaking about workforce development and the investments in our state upcoming. The announcement by Ford, a huge announcement for our state. I think Toyota, as well as planning a pretty significant investment in the facility there at Georgetown. Knowing that those needs are upcoming, what kind of continued investment or new opportunities in career and technical education with regards to P16 and programs as far as pathways for students, and then on to programs after secondary school to get our students prepared. As Lieutenant Governor Coleman said, I think Dr. Thompson said that college is for everybody. It just looks a little bit differently. So could anybody, Lieutenant Governor or anyone else, could you speak to investments that you intend to make to prepare for these jobs that and the employee vacancies that already exist and the new ones that will be coming?
I'd be happy to. So I know you mentioned CTE. There's been a big, I think, a refocus on vocational education and those pathways. And that's so critically important because it begins the pipeline and it begins the job training. And I always tell folks all the time that it's just as important as a student to figure out what you don't want to do as it is to figure out what you do want to do. Nursing may sound great to you until you realize what you have to do as a nurse. And then you're thinking, I don't know if I want to do this. And you've gone through nursing school, right? So having exposure to those industries right in your backyard, understanding what's there and getting experience is critically important. And so I know you mentioned the investments. We've had $12.6 billion worth of investments in Kentucky in this year alone. We're not even to Thanksgiving yet. We've created, it changes every day, but 20-something thousand new jobs in Kentucky. And so it is the opportunity is endless. But this is the point I like to make as a teacher is you can build the best economy you want to build. You can bring forward and you can expand to Toyota and you can do all of those things. And those are great, great things. But we have to be able to sustain it. We have to be able to prove that these businesses made the right decision by investing their future in Kentucky. I mean, the Ford's COO said that the announcement in Kentucky was as historic as when the first Model T rolled off the line, which as a history teacher just blew my mind to think about the magnitude of it. And so the point I like to make is if we stick with Ford, first of all, Ford is setting up shop in a town called Glendale that has one stoplight and 2 restaurants, right? That place is probably going to see some significant changes in the coming years. And so that's great, number one, for rural development, right? Rural economic development. But number two, we've got to figure out, we got to work with our industry and figure out, what do you need and how can we help provide that for you, right? With our local school systems, with our KCTCS systems, with our major universities through research and design and things like that. And so it really is multifaceted. But the bottom line is that if we are building, I'll give you just this example. If we have 2 brand new battery plants that are building the future of Ford, which is a Fortune 500 company, and we have vocational schools in the area that look like that look still like they're in the 1970s, because some of them do, it's all for naught. We're not going to be able to take kids from a 1970s vocational school and put them in a futuristic place like an EV battery plant and then be able to adjust. And so that's a disservice. And I like to make this point. The first swath of folks that Ford's going to hire right now are 14 to 18 years old. They are in your schools. And so we've got to start thinking about we talk about the jobs of the future. They're here. They're here. The future is now. And so we've got to make sure that our school systems have the resources that they need, the technology that they need to be able to provide that for those industries, but also for our families and those kids that can change the trajectory of their family's life forever.
Well, I know we've been grappling with, how to do CTE, with the state operated, centers and the local operated centers. And then, many of our superintendents have school-based CTE programming. And one of the things that I know, the funding has always been a challenge, but I know when I served on a task force, like in 2010, grappling with this, it was like, we can only do this when we're going to make a major investment into it. And so, that's another opportunity if we have, the funding to do it. But as you can hear from our superintendents, many of them are dealing with a 1970s building and 67 to be exact, and trying to figure out how to do that. So we're ready to roll up our sleeves and be creative. But anybody else want to follow up on that? Representative Bland, I know you're on the A&R and you mentioned that. Any additional comments?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Representative Smith and I pushed in the final hour for the $75 million for our vocational schools in this past budget. And we will be going back seeking more funding coming up in this budget for our vocational schools, because Lieutenant Governor is correct. They're in the 14 to 18-year-old range. Not only just the mere appearance of the older buildings, but quite frankly, the technology that's available within these facilities are going to have to be brought up to modern standards in order to meet the needs. I mean, used to, we were training vocational students on nuts and bolts and grease and those type things, and now it's all these different machines that is operated by computers and technology, and it's a total different world than most of us grew up in. And we have to fit our vocational schools for our students to be the best they can be, and we have to make sure that we put them in a position to be successful, and that's one of the things we're going to be focusing on.
Good deal. Eric Kennedy,
I think we might have a question from Dr. Fletcher on Zoom, but right before we turn it over to him, I'll just say a big part of this Ford discussion is not only that the 14 to 18-year-old students that are in our schools now will take those jobs, but the school boards and the districts as employers, sometimes the biggest employer in a community. As soon as I saw that, we said, thank God for this announcement, but I hope none of the 5,000 people they're hiring need CDLs, because we already can't find CDL folks to drive our school buses.
No kidding.
And then the instructors, as soon as we get a new CTE facility and a new equipment, we need the instructors in those facilities that are the same people that now we're going to be competing with against Ford. So there's many pieces to it, definitely.
Dr. Fletcher?
Oh, thank you, gentlemen. As far as, I want to make a couple of comments. First of all, it is awesome that we have the Ford plant coming into Kentucky. That is monumental for our state. But I wanted to address a little bit about Eastern Kentucky for just a second. OEA put out a report to the Legislative Research Commission talking about quintiles of property rich versus property poor districts. If you look at KEDC, I would bet 70% of our, if not more, of our communities are considered, our counties are considered either property poor in quintile 1 or quintile 2. With that being said, there's a huge discrepancy when you start talking about how much money is spent per student. Extrapolate that out, you're going to have a huge discrepancy in how much money is available to pay for teachers, to pay for other things. So if you look at this, Lawrence County is a quintile 2. In other words, we're somewhere in the 20th to 40th percentile as far as property value. But most, I would say well over half is in quintile 1 of the counties within KEDC. So my question is, what are some discussions that are occurring amongst legislators to address those funding inequities among property poor districts versus property rich districts? And to give you an example, if you look at property rich districts, it's over $11,000 being spent per student, whereas in property poor districts, it's about $8,800 being spent. That's a big, or money being spent per student. The same thing as far as teachers. If you look at the 3 top districts in the state and their average teacher salary is around $65,000, whereas a quintile 1 district's about $49,000. What kind of discussions are we looking at? Again, we're talking about funding of education. I think that we're full day kindergarten is awesome. I really think that transportation is awesome. It helps out all districts, but still, yeah, we're not really having a lot of discussions about addressing that inequity. So thoughts there from the legislators, please.
Adam Bowling, I'll jump on that one. And I'm glad you brought up this point. And this is not a comment to in any way disparage the work that the school funding task force did and the people that were involved in that. They came out with some really good recommendations, and I was happy to get those recommendations. However, I thought the school funding task force was going to look at alternate ways outside of what we're already doing to fund schools, and to look at it more holistically across the board on what are the issues certain districts are having. Because you just hit on probably the number one issue. Well, first of all, loss of students, so loss of population, but then loss of property value. I know in Harlan County, they had their tax base was $1.1 billion. Over a 2 or 3 year period, it dropped to $700 million. That's $400 million drop in your tax base. That affects everything dramatically. And I know it's not just that way for Bell and Harlan County, which I represent, but most of the coal producing counties in Eastern and Western Kentucky. And so what I really wanted to do is get recommendations back that took all these things into account. What are your facility costs? What does your tax base look like? What does your ADA look like? To come up with recommendations that took in all those factors. And, I feel like we missed the boat a little bit on that. And so, I'm hoping that moving forward, I don't have an answer to your question on that, Mr. Fletcher. But I'm hoping moving forward, that's something we can really look at, because, the projections for Eastern Kentucky, there's that population is not going to come back overnight. That tax base that's been lost, it's going to be lost for the next 20 years. And so we've got to take that into consideration. I'm glad you brought up that point.
If I may follow up, I think it was either recommendation 7 or 8 actually refers back to that OEA report. Even though there weren't things mentioned specifically, the report itself has all those inequities, or has a lot of the inequities addressed within it. So there's different ways that there are recommendations within that report, that everything from add-ons for at-risk to add-ons for rural districts, add-ons to other things like that. So though that is in that report, although I agree there were some, there weren't mentioned specifically in those 9 recommendations. So I'm looking at the report right now, but again, any way that we can look at as a legislation of how do we, again, I don't want to take any money from any district. I don't think that's where we need to go. In other words, we don't need to redistribute money from a property rich district to a property poor district, but we do need to close the gap. So that means there's going to have to be an addition to funding. I think one of the representatives mentioned that the only way that we're really going to make a big difference is to add money into education as opposed to redistributing what's already there. So again, I appreciate your thoughts on that. I appreciate you looking at it. As far as Eastern Kentucky, you're correct, absolutely correct. I think Lawrence County was the only county in our area that grew over the last 10 years, but it was very small, so according to the census. We are losing people as a region, as a whole, and how do we change that?
I think we're nearing the end of the time here, and we want to be careful and considerate of everyone's time. I think we may have one more question or comment from.
Okay. All right. Real quick, just we've had some conversation around CTE funding and career tech ed, and Representative Blanton specifically, you mentioned a couple of things around those that need to invest more in that. As we talk about that, are we talking more about, or can you give us some idea on the prevailing thought there of the legislative body? Is that looking at more investment in facilities or operational expenses? And I say that because in Madison County, we have an area tech center that we are now replacing. Our district's just made a $35 million investment in facilities specifically for career tech ed. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I think it's a combination. Some places need, quite frankly, all new facilities. Some simply need to be renovated. If you're building an all new facility, then we need to equip it from the get-go with what it needs. Those that are doing renovation, then we need to go in and also update the equipment and the things you need for today's environment, today's preparation of our workforce. And so I think it's a combination of both. We need to increase funding for both to make sure that you have those. I was at the local Carpenters Union Hall down in Ashland about 18 months ago before the pandemic hit. Maybe this thing's running much longer. Maybe it's been 2 years ago now, but anyways, they had this, basically it's a virtual welding machine, and they teach people the basics of starting to weld without ever having to put a welding stick in their hand or a piece of metal. And I'm like, we got to have that in our welding shop, right, for our new students. So that type of technology, even in the ones that's not using the new technological machines, but are actually still having to do hands-on stuff like welding, there is technology out there that helps advance them. And every one of our schools that has welding should have some of this equipment. And so I think it's a combination. It's going to take a combination. That's what I'm pushing for.
Well, we want to say thank you again to our panel, Mr. Blanton, and all of our representatives, Ms. Norma. We're glad to have you, Mr. McCool, and Representative Bowling. Also, a special thanks to our Lieutenant Governor. I said a few minutes ago, she never turns down anything in education. Never. And I could tell you, I've been around a long time, 32 years and almost 10 years at this job, and it has not always been that way. So we appreciate that very much. I would like to say we do have a little gift. It's under your, you don't have to worry about it overdoing your budget that you all can have. I know there's something about that or something. So we didn't go over that, but it just says thank you from KEDC. Kentucky Education Development Corporation. We've been around about 57 years. So we're getting a little old. We've been at this a long time, and we service about 75 school districts in Kentucky. And we feel like these folks at the table, they're our board of directors, and they lead us to go in the right direction. And this is exactly what they said they wanted and needed. And that's why we do this every year. So we want you to know how important you being here and listening to these folks, that how important that it really is, because these really are your ambassadors out there. They're the people, the communicators to your communities, and make or break that. And these folks are the souls of their community. So we appreciate your time and know how much that means to us for you to be here today. Am I leaving out anything? I would like to thank Eric Kennedy from Kentucky School Boards Association. I know you all see these guys all the time. And Dr. Jim Flynn from the Superintendent Association. And I know you see Dr. Jim in Frankfurt a lot. And hopefully you'll see all of us in session. But we appreciate all of you coming together. And the one thing I think everybody in this room is that we want what's best for our kids in Kentucky, and we want them to stay here. And there is nobody in this room that's not on the same side that you're on, and vice versa. So we appreciate you very much. Appreciate you all very much. We would like to get some photo ops of everyone, please. So I think Carla's got everything set up here. So before you get out the door, you're going to have to do a photo op. So we appreciate you.